Hi everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Fight Chat Friday, where we're talking all things intensity, and in particular for today's episode, why you might want to lower the intensity of the fight and what benefits you can get out of that. So if that's something that you haven't considered before or you want to see our take on it, stay with us for this episode.
Everybody, welcome back to Fight Chat Friday. So this idea on intensity arose from last week's episode based on what we kind of said as the new style, and intensity was something that propped up. So we just tried a little bit of a poll this week, and at the start it was 50-50, and then we noticed that, okay, more people are actually in favor of a more relaxed intensity, and we got a couple of questions in regarding this as well. So it is an interesting topic and something that's probably quite difficult for most people. So first things first, why would we want to lower intensity?
Sure.
So there's obviously a couple of reasons for this, but what's the couple of takes on the top of the mind for this, Adrian?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, there's enough in this that we've decided to do a two-parter and tackle higher and lower intensity. But when we're looking at this lower intensity, we're usually looking at situations where you have maybe a little bit of an advantage on the scoreboard. You might have taken a bang. Was another one as well. You might want to take the sting out of the match for a little while to gather your thoughts and recover yourself. Momentum might have shifted against you a little bit for a while, and you might need a few seconds to figure out what's important now. And of course, higher intensity might just suit your opponent more than you. So I think that's another good reason why you might lower the intensity to make them less comfortable.
Yeah, and even on top of that, then you have when you're thinking your style, like conditioning and things, maybe the other side, the opponent is a bit more conditioned and looking to make the difference in the later rounds and maybe towards the end of the match. So you just want to kind of like bide your time and just pace yourself a little bit. So obviously there's lots of reasons why you might want to reduce the intensity. Now, when you do reduce the intensity, of course, the clearer, more visible scores become even more important.
Yeah.
And as well, things like warnings and fouls come into play a bit more, because naturally the scoreboard will probably be less active then as well.
Well, that's it for sure. And I mean, it's fair to say that the people who will favour a higher intensity tend to be younger. And although there's less of them around at the moment, that those people that are tipping into their late 30s and towards 40 rarely want to be the ones that are pushing the intensity throughout the match. So let's have a look at some of the mechanisms that you can use maybe to bring the intensity of the match down, and maybe the benefit or the impact that might have on the match. So starting with just your bounce.
Yeah, so this is straightforward enough. Like, the more that you're bouncing on the toes, we see here Calvin Nunes just a little bit more flat-footed is an example, where Davide is a bit more active on the feet. So obviously this makes a big impact on just the feel of it. So anybody who's been in a ring before, that had some sparring experience, knows what this feels like when one person is doing a lot of bouncing and the other person is just a bit more kind of relaxed on the feet.
And it's definitely there's a tendency to try to match your opponent. So someone who's looking to do the opposite and raise the intensity will often add the intensity into their bounce and a little shifting, testing, and doing the exact opposite of that, bringing it down, kind of flattens the other person onto their feet as well. And I think that has a big impact in terms of what you plan to do next, because now it's almost like that the shootout at midday in in front of the saloon, where
right to draw.
Yeah, it then becomes who's going to flinch first, who's going to go first, and it's a game of nerve as well, which that's just, it changes the dynamic of a match from someone who is dictating rhythm and dictating distance to someone who's just dictating go. And I think that really changes things a little bit.
And usually this will tend to favour the more kind of like experienced fighter a little bit.
Sure.
And I think that this naturally ties in very well with having a threat and having techniques and shots that are quite threatening. So like, if you can threaten somebody with like a vicious head kick or a nice strong backhand or a big body shot, like like people are going to be a little bit more cautious. So we see Daniel Giaula here on the left. He's just
Stalking.
patient, and then stalking is a good word for it, and then smashes down the pipe with the backhand. So having a big threat like this, and then kind of almost being known for this, kind of plays into people's style, especially in competition, being able to reduce the intensity then.
And even though this particular clip isn't at a low intensity, it's that representation of the threat. So because throughout the process of the match there's been leverage off of that long side kick at that longer distance, it then allows you to develop some other shots. So in the same way as, let's say, Daniel coming in there is tempting people to cut, like, you know, as we're looking at this backhand, he's tempting the person to come rush me, and he could slip the front foot and put in the backhand, but he's also well known for a back kick. So it gives that other option. And like this with Yassine, like Doyle is probably still respecting that side kick and expecting to have to deal with the side kick.
Yeah.
And it opens the opportunity for the blitz.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And here we've seen Pato Garlic with nice axe kicks landing, so obviously quite known for it. But I think you mentioned, Adrian, that this was early on in the match where she's kind of threatening a head kick. So it kind of sets the stall out then for what to expect. Is like, okay, I don't want to give away 3 points early on, so I got to just respect it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that, okay, here's the little warning shot early on. It's like if someone swings and misses with a band-aid or something like that, then the other person isn't as likely to put that front leg carrying Dolio in there because they know their chin's going to be open. And Pato showing that downward kick and Evelina having a near miss with it early on. I think later in the match she starts to, or she's respecting the potential of that shot to, you know, especially if the match stays close and a headshot will swing it. And it again allows Pato to have the side kick or the defensive side kick there because Evelina is staying at a longer distance to give that that space to the downward kick that Pato's representing. So yeah, I do think that threat factor is big.
Yeah, and then like as well, it allows the person who's trying to reduce the intensity slightly to be still proactive, which is important because you don't want to get your lines blurred here and say just because you want a lower intensity that you want to be more passive. You still kind of want to be the boss and controlling the action as best you can.
For sure. So let's look at an easy one, distance. Because of course, if you're the one who's further away and keeping the action long, you have some advantages towards lowering the intensity.
Yeah, especially like this particular match is at a draw right now, but especially if you're winning and you're leading on the scoreboard, you have that advantage that you can extend the distance more and they have to come to you. And of course, that's going to help you reduce the intensity because now they have to bypass that gap that's in between both people.
For sure, and this is one that people will be used to seeing, you know, someone circling about or wheeling about the ring, keeping the distance long. And usually when, as you can see here, it starts at 4-0 towards Sarah in blue. But that is one of the reasons and one of the most common reasons why you might want to bring down the intensity. You want to deny your opponent opportunities for interactions and engagements. So if you can keep that distance long, keep your opponent far away, they have to commit more and risk being countered when they try to cross that distance.
Yeah, and usually if you're kind of like the more skilled fighter, there's a good chance as well that you're going to be quite comfortable at that longer distance because it gives you more time to react, of course. So your reactions will probably be sharper and you'll probably have more tools in the bag to be able to deal with that as well. So even more reason for you to kind of extend that range just to counter people and pick people off.
Yeah, it kind of brings us into that whole thing of less actions. And as we're looking at clips here, like, you know, there's not an awful lot happening. And of course, intensity is linked to the amount of action that's happening. You know, there's no two ways about it. Like, and you can feel intensity in tension as well. But when we're looking at that lower number of actions, that can suit somebody. So, you know, broken play, lots of openings for shots, that will suit a particular type of fighter. But in particular, counter fighters don't want an awful lot of shots. They want to make it, you know, a good successful counter and set that space again. Likewise, when you're in the lead, leaving more engagements there is more opportunities for your opponent to do something with your or to make something of themselves.
Yeah, because when you're a counter fighter, the more shots that your opponent throw, it's kind of harder to get in that correct counter. Where if they throw one or two, it's nice to kind of fit in between those gaps or counter before they go or whatever. But like we seen in the last clip, Daniel Diawla did a great job there of actually using his feints and his body movement and his hands to almost keep his opponent thinking there's more going on than what there is. And that just keeps him guessing and keeps him honest, while he still gets to reduce the intensity in terms of shots thrown. So you see there's not many shots thrown, but he's just kind of keeping his opponent engaged and thinking that, okay, again, it's kind of linked to that threat that we seen earlier. There might be something coming here, so just to be aware. And then that naturally will kind of reduce the intensity if they're not going to bite.
And it actually saps an awful lot of energy out of you as well if you're used to going at a more natural rhythm, more natural intensity. Then having to slow down and focus and concentrate like that does really hurt. And I mean, this one's going on repeat, but it was worth saying, whether it's this one or looking at Sarah, it's the fact of the single shot buying so much separation, I think, is the key thing there.
Yeah, and we see like there's the whole idea of singular shots versus combinations.
Yeah.
If you're behind and the clock is running, you want to get in there and go gung-ho, throw multiple shots. Whereas if you're trying to reduce the intensity and keep the win on the scoreboard, you're looking for the singular clean shot. And again, trying to use the idea we used earlier of a bit more distance. So we've seen Adam did a great job there against Magomed, where Magomed was trying to up the intensity, get his hands going and kicks after, where Adam was probably ahead on the scoreboard and just looking to extend the range and just kind of lower that intensity to get the cleaner shot for the referees.
Definitely. And I mean, I think the key thing that we're looking at there is how do you layer these things one on top of the other? So, if you're looking to overall lower the intensity, we're still talking about the same kind of principles that you can impact on as a competitor again and again and again. So we're talking about the distance between you and your opponent, your position in the ring. We're talking about the tempo of the match. And then in the shot selection, we're looking at those kind of shots that allow you to preserve the distance, that allow you to preserve that lower tempo. So single, long, very clear shots, often stopping shots or slipping shots that, they don't go in the direction that your opponent wants to go in. So the stopping shot that then lets you break and make an angle, the slipping shot that lets your opponent pass by. I think those are the kind of things that we're looking at there.
Yeah, you don't want to be getting into a bit of a barn burner and slugging it out, really. That's the opposite of what we're looking for here.
For sure. So what are we going to look at for our members section this week?
Yeah, so anybody who is in the members group, so anyone who wants to get involved there, look for the join button on our channel. And we will be looking at how to use your training in sparring to help understand these principles that we covered today and to get a little bit sharper and a bit more proficient at being able to control intensity. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And anybody who doesn't know, that's what we cover most weeks in the members section. We link it to the Fight Chat Friday and how you can train that particular skill or principle.
So that's us on turning the dial down and lowering intensity. Next week, of course, we're going to look at turning the dial the other direction and raising the heat on your opponent, taking the intensity to another level. And that should certainly be a fun one to look into. So from myself and Richie today, see you next Friday.